for Thursday, May 6th of 2021. May I have a roll call, please?
John Brown.
Here.
Scott West.
Here.
Leon Davis. Jeffrey Byer.
Here.
Greg Bowman.
Here.
David Randolph.
Here.
Darrell Minton.
Here. Do I hear a motion to approve? So I have to read it. Is that on?
Wrong button.
There we go. Sorry. Hear a motion to approve the minutes from of April 8th.
So moved. Just one small typo in item 10, just items instead of should be item with that tweak. I'll move to approve.
I think there was scrivener's error once. I had choose. Yeah, 21:45 LS.
Did you second that, John?
Second.
John Brown.
Yes.
Scott West.
Yes.
Jeffrey Byer.
Yes.
Greg Bowman.
Yes.
David Randolph.
Yes.
Darrell Minton.
Yes. We have one item of old business. It's consideration and possible approval, denial, amendment, and or revision of recommendation of JZ 21 PUD 127. Request by Robert Bell for approval of a planned unit development and a zone change from agricultural to a residential single-family medium density at the general location of south corner of East 106th Street South and South Harvard. And Marseille, I understand you're far away. What you see there on the screen, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners. This is an item you heard last month, and it is a PUD for a single-family subdivision. At the time of our initial hearing, there were concerns from the Planning Commission, including safety regarding the roads in that area. There are very many, it's kind of a winding road. It's a little bit more narrow than some of our other streets when it goes down into Hartford. We had questions about the lift stations and how that was all going to take place. We also had some comments about side yards being 5 and 5 feet on each side. There were questions about density. My planning commissioners, some were in agreement, some were not, but it was a very good discussion. And we had a motion that failed. We had another motion that failed, and in the end, it was tabled until tonight. One of the things that has changed a little bit, and I'll go through the details of the PUD, but in regards to safety, I think that is a legitimate concern. And at the intersection of 126th and Harvard, that's been a conversation within or amongst staff for probably almost since I've been at the city of Jenks. Just how dangerous is it? Just a lot of dialogue, and we've talked about possible solutions, but without a complete and total overhaul, we had not ever nailed down anything that we felt like we wanted to do. After the public hearing, Mr. Carr was online and he did start the dialogue up again. And one of the recommendations that has come from staff is that we're willing to put in stop signs at that intersection. And it's not a standard fix because it's of the way it's more of a curve instead of 2 streets intersecting or 3 streets. But we felt like it could possibly be beneficial. So Chairman Minden has made other comments and recommendations regarding traffic, and if she wants to speak on that later, she can. And I just want to say we're open to hearing the conversation and having a larger dialogue if we need to, but just so that you all know that traffic, we have heard you and we do understand that it can be dangerous, and we are willing to look at that, and something for sure will be done. And the very minimum would be stop signs at that intersection. So with that being said, Mr. Robert Bell is representing the applicant. This item has gone to TAC. One of the biggest takeaways is One Oak has really started showing up at our technical advisory committee meetings. And they're requesting an encroachment agreement for all of those developments along Harvard, and anywhere their easement touches property, they're really chasing that encroachment agreement. So there was a couple of minor comments that staff had. This is in Ward 3 for City Council. It is currently zoned Ag. It is single-family residential, which we already talked about. The comprehensive plan lists it as medium-intensity single-family. It's located north of the northwest corner of 131st and Harvard, more at the corner of 126th and Harvard. It's about 32 acres. One of the amenities that the developer wants to do is create a series of water features and wet ponds that would stay, that'd be used for detention and also for as amenities for the community. They want to do some walking trails and some other things. If you look on page 11 of your packet, it shows the chart where I kind of compare what is an RS1 per our code today as it is, RS2 per our code, what the PUD says, and what an RS3 looks like. And we had a lot of discussion about that. And I pulled up last month, and I'm not going to go through the trouble of pulling it up again, but what has been approved in Jenks has almost never been according to what is in the code book. So I just wanted to remind everyone of that. And I will say, for the record, we do have a lot of 5 and 5, probably, I don't even know what percentage, but there are a lot of 5 and 5s. And our lot width for the city of Jenks as a whole is a very narrow and sometimes not deep, but I do like it when I see a narrow and deep lot because for whatever reason, swimming pools are very, very popular and the shallow lots can't have a pool, and then people cry to the city planner about that. And that's really sad. So on page 12, you see the zoning map. It shows it as ag. There's an arrow there. Below that, exhibit B is the site layout. And then we have on page 13, this was taken from the plat in that area. You can see Fraser Meadows is just below that, and they're getting ready to start phase 1 of Fraser Meadows, and this would be a separate subdivision. And in the evaluation, the Fraser Falls development is part of the Fraser subdivision legacy. The development will create the opportunity to improve some of the traffic concerns. One of the things that was highlighted by the consultant is that they are dedicating a portion of that hard corner as right-of-way, and that will deal with, could help improve the area, and it definitely would help if they get the brush cleared in the immediate future. Approving this rezoning and PUD request will allow the developer to complete the contract for the land and for the land purchase and proceed to engineering. And if you look on page 15, I have about 6 comments. There were not a lot, but one of them is work with city staff on traffic conditions at the corner of 126th and Harvard. So like I said, will be an ongoing dialogue. We're open to any comments that you all have, but in the end, the traffic engineering department and we'll work with the police department, public safety, and they'll decide what they think is the safest and best route if you choose to recommend approval of this. So there are two actions. Staff and TAC recommend approval of Fraser Falls request to rezone from ag to RS2 and add a planned unit development overlay PUD 127. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them. I believe the applicant is also in the audience if you have any questions that I cannot answer.
Thank you, Marseille. Any questions or comments from the commissioners?
I got a comment that may help simplify the discussion we had at our last meeting. I want to walk back my concerns on the setbacks. I think moving forward as we adopt the UDO, we want to spend some time evaluating recommendations from also in the bean about what we codify as our front and back and side setbacks. And what stood out when we looked at this, you guys recall the table that's on page 11 was also in our packet last week. And that setback kind of stood out to me. In addition to that, when we looked at those recommended setbacks on density, or the density and setbacks that we looked at on the from also in the Levine, it also appeared to be outside the scope of what we're moving toward. Having said that, though, I want us to be consistent, and ironically, the 2 of the preceding items that we voted on last week had 5 to 5 setbacks, and I didn't catch those. So with that said, I want to withdraw my concerns for those 5 and 5 setbacks. So I think we have to be consistent at this point until we determine what we're going to do UDO wise and make changes. The only other issue that came up, I noticed with the changes in traffic, I think that will resolve some of the concerns that were presented. I do have one other issue, kind of a question that will go to the developer, and that is, there was a question about with the gated and the keypad and the gates. I can't find where we have actually established a standard for the measurement of how far the gate or the keypad is to the road. And if it's gated, and knowing that there was concerns for traffic, if you've got, let's say, a lawn company coming in, they've got a truck and a 40-foot trailer, is where the keypad and where the road ends, is it going to potentially obstruct traffic? So we need to iron that out. It's going to set up a standard of how much space has to be from the keypad to where entering vehicles stop to where there's still clearance in the road. But that's the only thing I have.
Okay. Anyone else?
Just briefly, kind of the same two items. John, I think you already highlighted it, but the 5 and 5, I'm not opposed to it either. And I mentioned last month that the comprehensive plan allows for the structures to be denser so long as there's amenities elsewhere. And I like that idea. There's, whatever, courts and water features. I mean, I think those are great and add value. So, and I think Commissioner West, you pointed out last time that there are indeed quite a lot of other developments that have 5 and 5, and I think that works. So, I'm not opposed to that. The keypad thing, just one more thing. If the road is expanded more later, I think we need to consider that for how far back those keypads might be. We might need even a little more. So I feel like that's in the future, but this might be nice.
Anyone else? I will add on my consideration, since I made a big to-do about that corner, because I live close to there, and that corner is a very dangerous corner, and it has been suggested to put a couple of stop signs in that area. And since that got brought up, since I'm by there every single day, I took a look at that to consideration and thought, I just don't see how stop signs are going to help it. Nobody slows down enough to stop at a sign. There's no one there that is going to really help or do anything with, except the guy that's building a house that's there that, oh yeah, maybe people will stop and he'll be able to get in and out okay. There's no shoulder at all going southbound around that corner, which makes it very dangerous. And we've had semis almost topple. There's been another shredder truck that actually toppled over and left a lot of shredded paper in the area. There's been cars that overrun that road and run into the side. In fact, this past weekend, a truck seemed to be going south on that corner, hit one of the directional signs, went straight through, and there's a big heavy piece of equipment in the corner that's going to be clearing some trees and everything, ran right into it, bammed the fence and everything. So another one. Then I started thinking, there's directional signs that let you know that there's sharp corners coming up, which are on all 3 of the corners that go down that area, with other signage that shows that this is where the sign is going. Except when you're going south around that corner, there's one sign that shows you a sign that there's a sharp curve, and then a 15-mile-per-hour picture. And then there's only one other reflective light, which this truck hit and knocked over. So now there's nothing. So actually, I think it's a safety feature in the sense of going south there. No one really knows, especially at night, because there's not streetlights down there necessarily, that corner is so sharp and it's coming up and people could lose their way. So in thinking about this, although I don't think stop signs are the right thing to do, I do think that if there was more reflective signs put up to let people know just how that corner goes in every direction, and or a flashing light that lets people know, hey, there's a big change coming up here, and or speed bumps to come over that area, which forces people to come down, because there are so many cars that go by there that if you have a sports car, more than likely you're speeding down that road 131st to take that corner, go down the little hill and take the next corner, because I've seen it in the morning when I'm out there and I've heard it going by my house. there's also wide trucks, super wide trucks. And if they're trying to pass each other at that corner, someone's going to have to get out of the way. So that's kind of my opinion. I'm letting everyone know. I have let the city know that this is, I think, a better option than doing stop signs. I don't think stop signs would be a good thing. So that addresses that. And the only other comment that I'm going to make about this whole housing complex, and I know there's probably nothing that we can now do as a commission because it's already in the UDO and or part of the comprehensive plan, is that because of all the farmland that's out there, the neighborhood that's north of this development has 2.5 acres. And then along the east side of the harbor, it's agriculture with one house and people have a lot of land. It's just a shame that we're taking all this big, wide open, beautiful space and cramping houses on top of each other versus maybe developing it where they could have had a 1/2 acre or 1 acre homes, because acreage is hard to find in Jenks. And it just seems to me it would have been better to do, that would have been better use of that land. But that's my opinion on that. And I'll ask one more time, any other commissioners have any other questions or comments they want to make?
I'll just add one more question for Morrissey, because of the road, because I was out there to drive as well, just to see what the traffic concerns were. And you're right, there is no shoulder on the road to the north, which is going to be on the city. Has that been evaluated by engineering to determine whether or not we should allow trucks, anything over 1 ton in that area? We put some traffic restrictions. Evaluate by engineering.
Well, I know there used to be a sign that said no through trucks when you hit the corner from 131st going north on Harvard, and I don't think it's there anymore because there's still trucks that come down there.
Madam Chair,
Oh, go ahead, Marcy.
thank you. I can speak to a couple of things. I did send this to the city engineer for review, the questions that you all had regarding the keypad setbacks and the traffic. And I want you to know that the engineering department has been approved by council to start a traffic survey that would kind of go in and study some of these areas. And this will be part of that discussion and that study to see what needs there are. So it's going to consider multiple things, but width and, I think even speed and places, and also decide who gets priority for expansion, et cetera. And some of that's already been done, but they're doing citywide. So they'll be doing traffic counts and different things like that. So I'm very excited about that. And he wanted me to let you all know that Mr. Cloyd said he did respond to the email. They do not know when this area will be widened, but that will be discussed and decided during this new traffic study that the engineering department has. They have hired a consultant. They were released on Tuesday night by the city council to do that. So that is good news, and we will at least get some information. And then I will make sure if this project is recommended for approval that we have further discussion on whether or not what is the best method moving forward. And I thank you for your comments and your email, Chair. The other thing is on the keypad setback. I think the Planning Commission has imposed from time to time distances, and I did send this to the engineer as well. Ask him to read. I have received an email from Ms. Charlotte Montgomery, and she asked the same question that Commissioner Brown asked. And there's nothing in writing, but this is something moving forward that we can look at. And we talked about the last time when Mr. McCarty presented the estates at Ritz Hollow. He used broken arrows, and I thought it was really well written, and it seemed to have adequate space, and it was something that we could look at adopting. So, but the city engineer did look at it, and with the distance that it's set at now, plus the easement, there's like a 50-foot utility easement for that gas line, that gives it plenty of stacking room as designed.
Okay. Before I ask the applicant to come forward, does anyone in the audience wish to speak on this agenda item, either for or against, or any comments that the audience has? If so, you're welcome to come up, give us your name and address. Anyone? If not, okay, I'll ask the applicant to come forward.
My name is Robert Bell. I live at 1011 West G Street in Jenks. I represent the developer in this matter, and I'll try to be short. Is this not on? Okay, well.
I don't think so. I can hear you fine, but I don't think it is.
I'll speak up. I'll try to speak up. And I'll be short because I think we're all in agreement here tonight now. I think there's a few things about this that is positive for the city, this development. One is the developer's willing to dedicate that corner off to the city and clear those trees. I think just that openness of that corner will help to some degree. Also, remember, we're because of the One Oak gas line, unlike the other developments that are up and down Harvard, we started our development 35 feet into that property. And so there's a 35-foot reserve area. If we can go back, Carrie, if we can put the development of the just the first or second picture past it. No, the first or second that shows the interior of the. There you go. That'll work. So if you look on the east side of this property and you see Harvard Street, you'll also see a strip of land. That's a reserve area associated with this development. That's because what we did was we took those residential properties completely off that gas line easement and started the development outside of that area. Well, in turn, that addresses one of your concerns related to the setback from the key pad, because now we're 1 3/4 car further than any other development is. The standard that usually followed in the city of Jenks was a 4-car stacking, and I agree that was from the gates. So that leaves you, because there's a turnaround associated with that only leaves you a 3-car stacking to the road. In our case, it's almost 5 because of that strip of land. So, and I'm not going to get into what's right or wrong for policy wise, but in this development, we're more than meets requirements associated with that. I talked about gifting the right of way and open that. That'll work with that 35-foot easement also, to where we can put some walking trails or sidewalks out in that area. That'll provide some more area for use that the pedestrians don't have to get on that dangerous curve at that point. So I think that will help also. The other two things I want to make note of is that the South Jenks along 121st Street has customarily seen water issues when the tank up on Turkey Mountain gets low, pressure gets low in the city of Jenks, and this development will actually help that, in that it connects the water systems associated with the vault on 131st and the water lines that are pressure coming from the north. At that point, it'll connect those two. It'll create a better loop system in here, because we'll extend the water lines down Harvard for connection to the subdivision that's on the other side of 126, and that's beneficial. The other beneficial thing is right now the city was looking at 2 separate lift stations located on those properties in there to make those work, and we're in time enough to not install that first lift station, and we're going to design it all to go to one. So that'll be an improvement for the sanitary sewer system. So for Mr. Bowman, who was not able to be here last week, if he has any questions, this is a gated community. This is a more or less a standard lot size in the city of Jenks that is associated with this. These houses are larger, the minimum square footage on these houses is 2,200 square feet, which is more than some of the other gated communities that are out there. I feel that the houses will probably even be bigger than that, to make it work. The 100% brick, and the big issue is as you see, those 3 wet ponds aren't really drainage. They're not for drainage. They don't exist. We're going to create them. We're also going to create waterfalls between them, and we're going to have research systems so that stays wet all the time. So so by creating that large enough area out there, and if you look at the air photos of that development, that tree line that through there follows that. We'll save those trees. We'll bark them up, make it more park-like setting. Pickleball courts on the west side of the development. Those kind of things. So, and I'm here to answer any questions that anybody has. So, I think I got to your questions.
One other question again is dealing with that road. You can have fencing on it.
Yes. Yeah, with the gated community, the entire road system will be fenced.
The reason I ask is when I look at the two curves, the one that's on 126 in Harvard, that's an outside curve. So that's really not an issue unless you're the guy that's building across the street. But coming off of Florence down to 126, that's an inside curve. So I would not want to be that. Somebody misses the curve.
And that, a lot of that was the reason that we set it all back. As you can see, that corner set back quite a ways, so we could dedicate that right away and clear that. We'll clear it off and then dedicate the right away. So we're not.
And then you'll build fences so you'll still have a blockage.
Recognizing how far back that is from the floor, that I don't think your fences will interfere with your vision in that area. So, okay, and I really don't see and I know there's some traffic, but it's not a heavy traffic flow out in that area that would justify the city going to 4-lane. I'd be surprised if they do. So, if their study will tell us that.
Thank you.
Anybody has any form?
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Since I was the one that killed it last time, I think it's appropriate to walk it back. So I have to make a motion to approve JZ 21 TZ 127 with the proposed provisions. That's it. So let's see.
I'll second.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Jeffrey Byer,
Yes.
Craig Bowman,
Yes.
David Randolph,
Yes.
Darrell Manning.
No. First item of business that's new is the consideration and possible approval, denial, amendment, or revision of recommendation of JZ 21 PUD 16.MA1, request by Heather Orvis for a major amendment to PUD 16 to allow for use unit 15 for a veterinary clinic with animal boarding on proposed pad site C, which is the southwest corner of the lot at the general location of 121st Street in South Elm. Marseille?
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I had to switch computers. Everybody froze up and went away, so sorry about that. The project before you is an existing subdivision. It is dedicated to commercial development, and there is currently a strip center. We did an amendment to get a childcare, and I believe there's a Casey's on the corner. The pad site that we're looking at is the most southern pad site. It's identified as pad site C, and the legal notice went out for the entire development area, but this PUD only is responsible for pad site C. So staff has met with Dr. Long and Ms. Orvis to discuss the short and long-term plans. And sorry about that. The staff believes with the plans as presented will provide adequate noise and odor control. So I want to say up front that I have received calls from commissioners who have received, it sounds like a lot of calls from neighbors and friends and concerned citizens. And I understand, because you can ask Ms. Orvis, when going into this project, I probably said no about 3 or 4 times, or at least said, I don't think that will work. I don't think it's going to work. But I did take the time to speak with Dr. Long. He did a presentation to the city staff, and after hearing about his current project that's located on Lynn Lane in Broken Arrow, after hearing about that project, and it's actually one that I have driven by hundreds of times, I felt like that for a healthy, vibrant commercial corner, that this was probably a good fit. And of course, I'll leave that decision up to you all. It will require a lot split, and if you recommend approval tonight, you will see that lot split next month. So if you're looking at page 30 of your packet or page 2 of your staff report, it shows a zoning map, and I've got an arrow there. So it's zoned commercial shopping, and part of that commercial shopping has been developed as single family residential on that hard southern end, and which is always odd when you have a commercial designation with single family residence on top. Also, that PUD 16, where those homes are built, has a detention area, and this pad site lines up adjacent to that detention area. So then this map doesn't show where the child care facility is, but it would be up on that northeast corner. So we've got the northwest corner developed, the northeast corner developed, and kind of the mid-southern point. I would say that the parcel immediately to the north of that has contacted, we've had some interest that they have contacted the city. So it looks like after many years of sitting dormant that there's some interest in this corner. The city's very excited about that. If you look on page 31 or page 3 of your staff report, you'll see what the original PUD 16 allowed. And that's the first column and all the X's there. And then you'll see the amendment request is literally just adding use unit 15, but it's small vet animal clinic and boarding kennels. And one of the concerns is that what if Dr. Long ends up selling it and then someone wants to take it and make it just boarding in general? So it would be very specific, as I recommend always in your motion, that if you want it to be small vet animal clinic, which is what you're approving, but be very specific that it cannot just serve as a kennel for boarding animals for people going on vacation, etc. So the last column is CS, and in general, use unit 15 is not allowed in CS, but this is a planned unit development. And with the right precautions, as you know, you can approve things within a planned unit development. So approving this request would recommend to City Council approval of the major amendment of PUD 16 to allow for a small animal vet clinic with pet boarding on pad site C only. If you look on page 4 of the staff report, it kind of gives a general overview. This is a Bing map up at the top. And then the strip center is actually called South County Square. And then on page 33 or page 5, it has a Google Earth shot. And then on page 4, it shows that very large, the fenced-in area is the detention area. And then between the development and the fenced-in area is pad site C. I believe Dr. Long has a presentation that he would like to give to you. I'm not going to spend a lot more time talking about it. If you all want me to say anything else, I'll be happy to try and answer questions, but I think you might want to hear from him first.
Thank you, Marseille. If it's okay with the commissioners, I'll ask Dr. Long to come forward and give us his presentation first.
I'm head of Orbis. He just wanted me to talk a little bit.
Okay, well, you're welcome to come forward and give us your name and address.
Office address. Is that okay? All right, Heather Brower Orbis, office address 8522 East 61st Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma 74133.
Click the silver button.
All right, so the what I wanted to mention to you all is that if Dr. Vaughn had just had a clinic is allowed under the current PUD provisions as it's under use unit number 11. I've researched it and looked into, well, what's the difference between a vet clinic and a veterinary hospital? And basically what it boils down to under the definition, I'll read to you under the Jenks code, it says a veterinary hospital for smaller animals is a building used exclusively for the care and treatment of domestic household type pets, including incidental overnight boarding of smaller animals within an enclosed building and excluding outside animal runs and boarding services. A clinic would pretty much just be an outpatient facility. For the size of that space and the services that can be provided, it doesn't really make sense to limit this to just a clinic. But I wanted to make sure that you all knew that if it was just a clinic, it could be in there, as well as a number of other professional offices. He's not planning on focusing on animal boarding. This isn't the main focus of this business. The boarding will be mainly for overnight animals that have had surgical procedures and, occasional, just families going on vacation, but it is not going to be a doggy daycare. It is not going to be a pet resort like Woodland West. It's going to simply be for convenience purposes. The animals go out to an animal run area for very short periods of time. Their waste is immediately picked up. In their current location, they're in the same exact situation. Their building is adjacent to a residential subdivision. We have had no complaints from that residential subdivision. And I'm going to let him go into his building structure the way he's done it. He has just about made it soundproof. So I'll just pass it along to him.
I'll raise this just a little bit. My name is Kevin Long. I live at 12625 South 198 East Avenue in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, 70014. So I'd like to thank the commission for listening to this and taking on this task. Definitely, I understand any concerns that would come from citizens about, a business like this. I've dealt with this before. My current hospital that I own as a sole owner is at 61st and Lynn Lane in Broken Arrow. It's at an almost identical situation as to this. That's actually one of the reasons I chose this spot, is because we have a track record that proves that we can not only be good neighbors, but we can build a beautiful facility. And I have a presentation. I wish we had access to it and Marseille might have access to some of the pictures because I know she sent some emails. So I don't know if Marseille, if you see any of those, because I really think they show what separates us from what you might be thinking, or if you're worried about a kennel facility. Couple simple facts. I'm a veterinarian. I don't plan on owning a big boarding facility. Quite frankly, anybody that's familiar with Jenks or South Tulsa knows that there are very large veterinary boarding facilities, whether it's Woodland West or it's even River Trails. They focus on that. That's really the purpose they exist. They have upwards of 200 runs to house animals. They have large play yards. They have exercise equipment. That's not what we do. We're a veterinary hospital. The facility that we have in Broken Arrow has about a footprint on the floor of about 6,000 square feet, and it does have a second story with just offices alone. We have 20 runs in our facility, and we're probably the largest clinic in Broken Arrow. The reason we have 20 runs is because I just need runs to be able to keep a dog overnight if it's recovering from surgery, or if it's sick, or as Ms. Orvis said, if we need to house an animal for a few days. We have worked incredibly hard on keeping our buildings soundproof from both directions. The situation that I'm currently in is actually what I would say is much more difficult than this Jenks situation. The Jenks property actually has a retention pond that borders almost 90% of the border between my clinic and the neighborhood. My Broken Arrow facility doesn't have that. And we're right up against 3 or 4 houses. Now, when we built our facility in Broken Arrow, we took that into consideration. We put our parking lot in between the fence and our clinic. We put any type of exercise yard, which for us, exercise yard is literally just an enclosed space where I can take an animal out to go to the bathroom, maybe obtain a sample, something of that nature. We have no play equipment. We don't leave them out there to play. That's not what we are. We are a medical facility. Our facility is completely enclosed. Our walls are 8 feet high. They are brick in most places. We actually provided an 8-foot high privacy fence for the neighborhood next to us so that they would have adequate coverage. We actually gave them the option and said, what do you guys want? And they told us. We have special lighting that only goes down, LED lighting, to not have any lighting disturb the neighborhood. We are not open late after hours. And quite frankly, in this location, we would never have any plans to do so. There is a very large emergency hospital that is located just over by Best Buy. And there's no reason for us to even consider going down that road. So we are simply your veterinary hospital that's open for normal hours. We close on evenings. We're very respectful of our neighbors. One of the things that we have done that is a bit unique is that kennel or the boarding area in my current clinic, we went through special engineering issues to make sure that it was soundproof, because what most people don't realize is I can't do business in my clinic if you're in an exam room and you can hear 20 dogs barking in the background. So my entire kennel is double walled, double insulated, has special coating on the walls to where you can't hear a dog in that area that's 10 feet away from you. In fact, my office that sits right above the kennel is insulated the exact same way. Now, we did this because we wanted to be courteous to our neighbors. We wanted to make sure that the neighbors never heard a dog barking inside my clinic, which we have never received a single complaint. But also, one of the benefits that we got in hindsight was that those animals are also insulated from the outside world too. Insulation works both ways. So the dogs that are actually in my kennel don't hear the world. It actually, believe it or not, has been incredibly helpful for dogs that are scared to death of 4th of July fireworks. Because my facility, you can't hear a thing. You can't hear a thing in or hear a thing out. And we did that by design for the neighborhood, but it ended up benefiting us in many, many ways. As far as our cleanliness and odor, that's not an issue. We're not a play yard. Every day my staff cleans the area, even though it's not even remotely adjacent to the neighborhood. And in fact, the grassy area that we do share as kind of a green space buffer, we clean that daily too. We've never had a single complaint from our neighbors. Not one, not about lighting, not about noise, not about odor, not about traffic, anything. We pride ourselves in being incredibly good neighbors, and this would be the whole goal here. We pride ourselves that the facility we're going to build is something that Jenks can be proud of. It's going to be beautiful, just like my clinic I would consider to be beautiful in Broken Arrow. That's what we are, it's what we do. We don't do doggy daycare. We have no plans to ever do doggy daycare. Honestly, business-wise, there's no money in that. It's not an effective way, it's not an effective use of that land. That land is worth far more to me to actually see medical patients than it is to put a boarding facility. That should be out in the field somewhere where you can put 140 kennels, 200 kennels. That's just kind of how we operate as a business plan. It's just not something that makes money for us, and nor do we want to go down that road. We have no intention of doing so. To answer the one question that someone had asked about what happens if Dr. Long sells? Well, I have no problem with putting a provision that says this facility has to be used for veterinary purposes and can never be turned into just a kennel. Quite frankly, it's a brick and mortar building. The way it will be designed, you'd have to tear the structure down completely to try to turn it into a kennel. You would also be fooled to build a kennel that was 6,000 square feet in size. There's no money in that. Just look at Woodland West. Just look at River Trails. They have built 30,000 square foot kennels because that's the only way you can make money at it. I have no desire to do that. That's not what we do. That's not what we're about, and we never plan to enter that phase or that avenue at all. So be happy to answer any questions that I haven't addressed. I know I probably rambled on, but I just want to give a really good picture of who we are and what we do. But if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Long. Okay, commissioners, back to the commissioners. Any questions or comments from the commissioners?
So just as a clarification, we are only talking about pad site C, and there will be no intention of going into South County Square in the strip. That's,
Yes, under this facility, yes.
yeah, so standalone facility only. And then again, your planned layout then will have the water retention between your facility and the nearby adjacent residential area.
Absolutely. There's one house that I believe we will share a very small border with. With that area, we plan on having a parking lot there. That's where we're going to have our parking. We're not going to have our building up against it, and we won't have fencing where animals will be up against it. As a veterinarian, as an owner of a business, one of the biggest fears I have is one of my animals getting out and getting into the street, and then having to explain to that owner what happened, or having an owner or have an animal take out and get into somebody else's yard and get attacked by another dog. That's why if you look at the way my current facility is built, it's literally built like Fort Knox for my facility to keep my animals safe, but also in conjunction, it's actually kept us, the neighborhoods don't even know we're there. It's very well done that way.
One other question, Ms. Ortis referenced boarding for fences going on vacation, but you referenced in your communication that more for those that have had surgery, need overnight. In your current practice, how many would you say typically do board overnight?
It depends on the time of year, it depends on the weekend. There are often weekends where we have 2-3 dogs, and those might even be mine. But for 4th of July, we'll have 20 dogs in there. But that's also for a weekend, and I guarantee it, you could be standing 1 foot outside of my door and you wouldn't hear a single one of them. The other thing that make it clear as well, like when you said that, we do not have outside kennels. I do not personally believe in having kennels that have access where dogs can freely decide if they want to be inside or want to be outside. I have controlled substances in my clinic. Safety and security is an absolute must. So our current facility, there is no inside-outside kennels, not what you would consider to be where a dog has the choice. And so quite frankly, a lot of people don't choose to board with us because my job is not to keep Fluffy happy. My job is to keep Fluffy safe. And my job is to treat Fluffy when Fluffy is ill. If you want to go to a boarding facility that has that fun outside access where the dog gets to choose, Woodland West is your choice, or River Trails is your choice. That's not what we do.
So likely, worst case scenario, over the religious highway, maybe 20 animals.
If that.
Anyone else?
Cats as well.
We do cats that have their own separate area. And I promise you will not hear cats, and we certainly do not let cats out to go to the bathroom.
Any other questions?
Just want to say thank you for appearing and this explanation on the sound. I flagged sound as sort of the big question mark. You mentioned at your Broken Arrow facility that there's an 8-foot wall. What sort of wall do you plan to have in Jenks?
So with the neighborhood, anybody that's seen that fence knows that the fence is in incredible disrepair. Obviously, I believe it's a 6-foot fence right now. So that fencing, because quite frankly, I want my business to look good, will be replaced, and I'll replace that. I plan on giving the neighborhood the same option as I gave the neighborhood in Broken Arrow. What did they choose? City of Broken Arrow required an 8-foot, but they decided to let the neighborhood decide, because some neighbors don't want a 6-foot fence over here and then an 8-foot fence over here. So we let the neighborhood decide. So they were planning on changing that. At my current clinic, I actually have a brick fence, like a nice brick fence that matches our building that actually kind of closes it off. We'll probably, for our area, that will be where we do allow the animals to congregate when they go to the bathroom. It'll actually not be adjacent to the neighborhood. It'll actually be closer. I guess that's on the, I think the north side of where our projected use of that is. So we'll actually be closer to the other strip center. And so to do that, I won't enclose my animals in a chain link fence because it's wrong. It's not safe for the animals. I won't enclose them in a wooden fence because dogs can chew out of that. So I will probably do it in Broken Arrow, which is an 8-foot high, beautiful brick or stone fence to match my building so that A, it is impenetrable and dogs cannot climb up it or underneath it because again, that's my worst fear. And we have never had that happen in Broken Arrow. And if any of you've seen 61st Amendment Lane, you know it is not a slow intersection. So we have an issue. So it would be something similar to that. I would replace the wooden fence, but the wooden fence will be basically the wooden fence, my parking lot for my staff, then my building. So my walking area will be right behind my building that will not be associated with the wooden fence. So that won't adjoin over there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
I don't actually have a question. I just have a comment because I received a lot of phone calls about this issue. I live in the adjacent neighborhood. And when you look at the detention pond, it does offer a barrier, but the only house that benefits it is the house to the south of the detention pond. It doesn't do much for the houses to the east of the detention pond. And this detention area, and I kind of understand what my neighbors are complaining about, concerned about, because when they moved into this neighborhood, they didn't expect to have something in their backyard, or they have to deal with possible removal of the waste, because the parking lot is going to be a buffer also to the neighborhood, and the trash is going to either be on the east of the building or in close proximity to those houses. And so I couldn't support this. I believe that the doctor builds a nice facility based on the pictures I've seen of this facility in Broken Arrow, but when this housing development was laid out and we bought into this neighborhood, we didn't buy into it to have it used in close proximity to our homes. So I personally, because of that reason, I can't.
And I mean, I can respect that. In our current facility, everything that you mentioned you're concerned about is actually closer to the neighborhood than it would be in this facility. And we've never had any complaints. And we've had multiple meetings with the city of Broken Arrow, so we had to expand our parking lot once, and still no complaints about that. Odor is not something that we've never had an issue with, whether it's our normal trash. I mean, honestly, you're going to have more odor from a fast food restaurant than you are in our trash. Ours, we don't have medical waste that has that type of odor. As far as animal waste in the grass, and that's picked up, and we're planning on having any type of area where the animals will go out to relieve themselves away from the neighborhood. We plan to build a facility as far away from the neighborhood as we physically can. Again, just to be a good neighbor. And again, under the current use allows, we can build a clinic. We can still do that. We would still have the same issues of if I have a dog that's had surgery, where do I take him to let him walk to kind of recover a little bit? And we'd still have the same thing. We just wouldn't have boarded. So under the current use permits, it's already permitted to do a clinic. We're just trying to be as responsible as we can to make sure that we're getting that approval ahead of time so that we do everything right by you guys.
Good, thank you. Anyone else?
I do have one question. I had reached out in advance and asked if staff was able to locate the previous report on this item, because I believe the same use came up before and it's also voted down.
Yes.
I'm going to let Marseille respond to that because she's signaling. Marseille?
Thank you, Chair Minden. Thank you, Commissioner Davis. A couple of things. I did ask Brandon. He looked for a couple of hours and he could not find anything. He looked under kennels, he looked under boarding, he looked under Yorktown, and we could not find anything on that case. If you have a specific time frame that you can kind of remember, we can maybe go back one more time. But he did look for that, and I apologize, we could not find anything. Secondly, I want to say I apologize because I feel like I was a little bit misleading in my staff report because I said there would not be any boarding, and I did not remember for whatever reason, I came away with the idea that there was no boarding except for medical reasons. So I apologize. It sounds like that Dr. Long does make provisions on occasion, and I feel like I was being misleading in my email response to one of our citizens and to you all in my staff report. And then thirdly, I need to ask Dr. Long a question. And Dr. Long, are you planning to take one of the spaces within the strip center for a clinic only now, or only if the PUD for the facility is approved?
So our business plan on this is when I build a building, I mean, the building that we plan on building there is an upwards of $2 million building. It's a huge investment. So one of the business strategies that I have is there is a lease space in that shopping center that would be a simple veterinary clinic. And if it succeeded the way we expect it to, the lease is designed that we have the ability to then build our building and leave that lease early to actually go into and build our facility. It's kind of like testing the waters to make sure that the area is viable for what we want to do. It's kind of hard to build a $2 million facility without a single known client already in your client base. That's a pretty big risk. I did the same thing in Broken Arrow. That my original clinic in Broken Arrow was in its original strip center location, about a third of a mile from our current spot, for about 4.5, 5 years. And then we grew, we were successful, and that's when I started the process of purchasing the land to build my own freestanding building. This area, I'm already kind of predicting that that's what's going to happen based on what I see happening in Jenks. So I'm trying to make sure that I have all that covered ahead of time.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Long. So you would proceed to have a clinic only, which is allowed, but you would not, but probably not if the council, if the planning commission makes a recommendation of approval and it goes to council and is approved, then your long-term goal is to have a clinic first in the strip center and then build your facility.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners?
I
I would like
jump
to.
in on that as well, on what Marcia said in the comments, that the clinic would be allowed to show use unit number 11 is offices and studios, and small veterinary animal clinic is reference to use unit 15. I would have concerns. I understand the business model of having to test the waters and get a footprint in the community. I'd be concerned because there are 2 food establishments within that particular strip mall. And then you've got the question of, again, what about sound in there? Clearly it would not be boarding, but you could have an issue with an animal while somebody's trying to dine, and then also potential shared ventilation. So I'd have some concerns about whether or not we could do that, and we have to get clarification, I think, from maybe city attorney, whether or not that would be permitted under use unit 11.
It is, I can answer that. It is allowed, a veterinary office is allowed with those services. They would have to go through any Tulsa Health Department and any other programs or like other organizations and laws that have to abide by those as well, if there's any spacing or any other type of ventilation requirements. But as far as uses, it is allowed. It does not exempt them from other things, but it is allowed by right.
And I can answer your questions. Again, my first facility, which was at the Shops at Lynn Lane, which was a strip center right there at around 65th and Lynn Lane, was almost an identical situation what you're talking about. I had neighbors that were, we literally shared a wall with a donut shop, a tanning salon, a nail salon. DeVita Dialysis was 2 doors down, dentist, chiropractor. So we had all those same kind of issues. When we built that facility, we soundproofed it. Ironically, all we could really smell was the panning solution. In that facility for 4.5 years, we also never had a complaint, not from the landlord, not from the donut shop owner, not from any patrons, not from the nail salon. We've never had a complaint because we've taken extra care to make sure that we are excellent neighbors and that we do all that. So that's something that we have done. Ventilation, I think, would not be an issue because the way we do our build outs, I would assume that there's no way we can share ventilation between the two of them. But in my first facility, we soundproofed all of our walls that bordered everybody, just to do that extra, little bit extra. You know, that's what we did. We will not board in the new facility, or in the little lease space, period, because it's literally 1,200 square feet. It's not big. There's literally no use for that in that facility. It's a complete waste of square footage. Just as honestly, focusing on boarding of any kind in a bigger facility is also a complete waste of square footage. That lot's just not big. Nor do I have any that. I haven't done it at my current location, and I have no plans to ever do that.
I need to open it up to the floor if you guys are.
Hold on one second. Marseille, can you answer a question for me on page 31, where it says uses are for this PUD?
Yes.
So am I right in saying that they could actually put a hotel on this spot, a drive-in, gasoline station, something like that?
Yeah, they had some asterisks, and I didn't write down what all those represented. They were kind of, they had some conditions for those specific ones where the asterisk is. But yes, that is allowed in the
So we
community.
could put a motel here. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'd like to open it to the floor if everyone, the commissioners are done. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Long. You may sit down.
Thank you.
At this point, I'll open it up to the floor, and if anyone in the audience wishes to speak on behalf for or against this item, you're welcome to come up and give us your name and address, and please keep it limited to 3 minutes, no longer than 3 minutes. And I see we have an eager person right away.
I'm John Sherrill, 911 South Magnolia Place, Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, 74012. I'm here representing the owners of the property being referenced, as well as South County as a development as a whole. Just want the commission to know that we're involved in both of these transactions. We're very concerned about the quiet enjoyment of our current tenants at South County. And we're convinced this facility, although it will be closer to that than it will be to the neighborhood, that we will continue to have quiet enjoyment of our tenants. I don't know if that helps, but just to let you guys know, we certainly take that into consideration. And we certainly turn down other opportunities to use this property for other uses that we wouldn't think would be good for the community, but this one we feel is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Baranski, 418 West 120th Place South, Jenks. My backyard is 121st. You guys seem to be very concerned about noise and trash. Didn't seem to be with Casey's. I get Casey's trash all the time. I get noise all the time. Dog facility, I was worried about the noise. Snow outside. I don't really see an issue with it. My concern would be the traffic of construction things going on right now. You still got that school going up right now. The Casey's brings in way too much traffic for my area. It's way noisier than it used to be. I never got one of these about the Casey's going in, so I appreciate this about this facility, but you seem more concerned about this man's facility than you did about us having a gas station that's pretty, from what I was told by the planner. It's not a pretty gas station, but anyways, I don't see the point of abiding or denying him what he wants to do, but a gas station. My main concern is the traffic.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Mary Ray. I live at 12104 South Cedar Avenue in Jenks. And my house backs up to this development. I'm one of the first ones in there. I built my house in 2002. And I don't remember exactly when, but I was at the exact commission meeting and you all turned down the development the last time I was here. I just think that I don't see how it can help our property values if you would want something in your backyard. We don't have a problem, put something that's appropriate in there. The child education center, we didn't have one problem with that. It's appropriate. But I just don't see how it's still, I don't care how quiet you are or whatever, you're still boarding dogs. We have problems with the neighborhood now with dog noise. What is this going to do to it? That's
Thank
just
you.
my opinion.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thanks.
My name's Nate Winters. I live at 515 West 124th Street South in Jenks. I'm one of the houses that's actually going to back right up to this thing. Just some concerns that I had hearing what they were saying is this is not their main focus, but it is a focus. So that means that at any point in time, somebody's focus can change. And so with that, even though it is a clinic, there is going to be boarding. So what if we go from 2 dogs to 30 dogs every day of the week? How does that change for everybody else? Once this is changed, it doesn't mean that it's just 2 dogs. It's 30 dogs every day. Businesses grow. It would be like me. I have a business. We do things all around town. But my main focus is one thing. That's what I want to do. If he's saying his main focus is a clinic, then do the clinic and do it right now. Don't try to get it changed to have a boarding as well. I think I speak for a lot of my neighbors. Leon's one of them as well. The pond that he represents, it has no buffer at all. Absolutely nothing. And I'll tell you that right now. It actually would buffer one house that is on a completely different street than what this is facing. So I would encourage everybody to really think hard about it. That's kind of where me and my neighbors stand. Maybe one of them will stand up too and kind of voice their concerns about it.
Thank you.
Oakley Burklow, I'm at 517 West.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Oakley Burklow, I'm at 517 West 124th Street South. I am just east of that retention pines farmhouse, so I'd be the most affected here by that going in. And I'll just kind of reiterate when they said that, you know, it's not what its focus is now, but we never know that, you know, it could be $20 eventually all the time. So kind of the same concern as him.
Thank you.
James Compton, 12410 South Day Place, Jenks, Oklahoma, 74037. So 2 houses from the retention pond. My only concern would just, and I'm not saying even his might change, but if you change the zoning, just does that change that someone else could come in later and do something that maybe we're not in favor of? That would be my only concern of just being like, she said, just be very specific in how we change the zoning would be my only concern. I don't want to do boarding with maybe the way now the zones change, maybe it allows something else in that wouldn't be favorable. So
thank you.
So I'm Sarah Foley, 12410 South Cedar Avenue. And I used to work for the city of Jenks, and I actually worked for Robert Bell, who worked this case previously. So this case was actually denied, and I'm pretty sure it was the same exact applicant. So this is in existence, Brandon. I can help you find it. It's between 2012 and 2017. So yeah, this has already been worked. This has already been denied. And I'm in agreement with my neighbors, and I'm in extreme.
Thank you.
Okay. Mike Brandis, I live at 514 West 124th Street South in Jenks, along with these guys back here. I know Kevin personally. I want nothing but for success for that guy. My concerns are some of the loose language around our intentions aren't to, our goal isn't this now. We aren't planning on this. I agree that a clinic would be good there. Great place to take our dogs, all that stuff, but I also know that there's 2 veterinary clinics within 3 miles in each direction. I've taken pets to both of them in different times that we've owned pets. So is there a market for it on that street? I don't know. But the looseness of some of the language just doesn't set right for me. And that's just we aren't planning on, our intentions aren't. Right now, this isn't the plan. Like we all know, plans change. And there are no guarantees there. If we don't firm up some of that language, I think it's worth another conversation, but that's kind of where I stand with things. And I'm the HOA president at this current time. And if things don't go well, I'm going to hear about it.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is Vivian Seegernet, live at 12110 South Cedar Avenue. My house backs up to the property completely. We're on the west or east side of it, so we'll get back at the news from Casey's. A couple of things with loose language. I'm glad he said that. City ordinance talks about nuisance. I mean, when you talk about having 20 dogs on the 4th of July weekend, holiday weekend, family comes, that's a problem. You gotta have them in and out all day long, right? So I'm on holiday. I don't want to have to be concerned about that. Neighbors are the same way. Traffic was another one. You know, we'll talk about that now. If you are boarding 20, if you've ever been down Union to Woodland in the morning taking my kids to school, which same area, we're coming out of there, it's backed up because people are trying to get the dogs in there. If it's not going to be necessarily boarding, then you might not have that. But if you're saying that you can have 20 dogs boarded there in a day and you're working normal hours, that means that hits us when we're taking kids to school and when we're picking them up in the evenings. So that's another one. Value and profit. Mr. Davis stated it, and I feel that if I was going to buy the property, that would definitely have came into my consideration if there was a veterinary clinic putting there. My kids, I have a 5-year-old daughter who does not respond very well to dogs because of incidents. We go to that shopping center to eat a Thomas Pizza. And therefore, my concern is somebody transferring that dog from a car into that center. Dr. Long mentioned a dog getting out or somebody breaking loose. It would be an incident where it wouldn't be pleasant for me. So that's a major concern for me because my kids are involved with it. And it's the unforeseeable. We call it factor, the X factor. The food venue passing, that's it. But mainly is for us now to sit back and say that we're going to change the rules that are set out, make an amendment to do something different. The gentleman back here said we're setting that precedent that who's next to do that. So I think that should be a consideration, commissioners, to think about that. Let's not start setting the precedent that the people that bought these houses in 3-4 different neighborhoods that surround them, really it's boxed in for the most part, except for the west side lot. I would like to know we're thinking that when we bought that house, we're not expecting things to change and potentially lower our profit.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the audience? Okay, thank you for your comments. At this point, I'll close the floor, turn it back to the commissioners. Any other comments or questions? I'm sorry.
Could we respond to a couple of their concerns?
Sure.
So again, these are good questions by the neighborhood, and honestly, it brings up more answers that I can help them with, or at least give some more clarification that I didn't get to share about with you in the beginning. First thing is, when we do allow animals to go out there, it's one animal at a time. We don't allow animals to mingle with each other that aren't from the exact same family because that's unsafe. So that's one of my rules at my current clinic, is that we're not allowed to let dog from family A go out to the same bathroom with dog with family B. It doesn't work that way. That's unsafe. Whatever you've seen with Caesar Milan on Discovery Channel is not true. That's not how dogs interact. So that's how we act because we're a hospital. So there's never 20 dogs outside at one point at all. That's just not feasible as the space is used for that. So just want to make that clear to understand, because I don't think people are understanding necessarily the difference between what I do versus what Woodland West does. Woodland West, their whole thing is boarding. They're a boarding facility and a veterinary hospital setting. That's what they were in the very beginning, years ago. That's what they still are. In regards to the question of this being the same petition, I will unequivocally swear that I have never applied for any type of permit use PUD change in the city of Jenks in my life. This is the first time we have ever done this. My only other business transaction was in the city of Broken Arrow, where I currently reside. And that is the absolute truth. So she must have me confused with somebody else, but that's not, we have not done this before. My attorney, Heather, wants to just cover a few things as well. We can maybe help answer some of those questions.
We're willing to amend the application to limit the number of boarding animals and put that into the language if that would help satisfy some of these concerns. Limit it to say 20. And that would, for all time, that if that space is used for a veterinary hospital, there can only be 20 animals, 20
Non-medical, non-surgical.
Non-medical, non-surgical at any given time, but at any given time, some of those spaces are going to be used by medical. So it's really going to be, it's not going to be 20 dogs on vacation. Some of those dogs are going to be there for medical purposes.
I'm fully willing to put it in writing. If they don't know me, they don't know me by my word, that's fine. I'm fully willing to do what she's suggesting and then put a cap on that. That's part of the PUD language, that if someone were to come by and buy it or try to do something else, they would have to do the same process and go through the same process to take it to all that. That's not what we want to do at all. We have no interest in doing it. That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
And Kevin, when was the first time you opened up a clinic in Broken Arrow?
Would have been 2010.
And then we opened the hospital in what year?
2016.
Yeah, I mean, I've been his attorney. I've known him since 2003, right? And I can tell you, we've never filed anything in the city of Jenks. He wouldn't have opened up a clinic in Broken Arrow and tried to apply for one in Jenks at the same time. It's just not possible.
Thank you.
Counselor, I have a question. Is there a possibility you represented another client on a similar proposal?
No, I've never, he's the only one that I'm a title examiner. I don't, I mean, I may do lot splits with Marseille or clear up easements, but this is not my usual work.
Thank you. Okay.
Marseille, can you see any reason why in the PUD we could restrict the number of boarding? I mean, I can't say I've seen us get to that level before. Are you comfortable with that if we have that provision in PUD?
If the applicant is comfortable with it, then I think that you can move forward with that as part of your motion.
And that would be survivable with
Oh, yeah.
change.
Any changes to that, that's enforceable once it is part of the ordinance. The PUD is adopted by ordinance. It is enforceable by the city. And if he ever sold and someone else came in, it would still apply.
So essentially, again, the petition is to waive the current restrictions, amending use unit 15 only. So that would, again, be limited then to no more than 20 animals or 20 overnight boards.
Yep.
Okay. I will say at one point, since I have had pets for years and years, and I've used a number of the veterinary facilities in the city and the suburbs. And I've been in the front of the house, in the back of the house, and I've been to little clinics and I've been to big clinics. And I know that when I get my animal out of my car, it's on a leash and it's under my control. It will never take a chance that it's going to get away from me. And I see everyone that goes to a vet is the same way. We care about our animals. If we're going to the vet's office, we don't want to be going. There's something wrong with the animal. If the animal has to have surgery and has to stay overnight, I don't want my animal staying there overnight. I'd rather bring it home where I can keep an eye on it and I can watch it, but it has to be done. They don't put them in a big area. They can't stay in a cage overnight. If anything, they're in a cage overnight, and they take them out controlled under leash to be able to go out and relieve themselves and come back in. So I understand what Dr. Long is saying about how the care and what they do in their animals, that it's expensive to go to the vet. It's expensive to take care of an animal. They care as much about your dog or your animal as we do. So I'm glad to see that there's another facility looking to come in this area. I use 3 vets, and I can't get a same-day appointment anymore. If something comes up, I can't get a same-day appointment. So I think there is a need for something like this. It's a small clinic. It's looking small. I think that we're over worrying about boarding. He's not going to board. If he does it, it's for one particular instance. He is in business to be a vet. Vets want to be vets. They don't want to mess with the boarding part of it. I hear that part of it. So that's just my end concept of this whole thing. So any other comments from the commissioners?
Mr. Long, can you explain to me, how long will you be in the shopping center deciding whether you're going to build this building or not?
Hopefully not very long. My hope is that.
So you did this in Broken Arrow, how long was that?
That was my very first clinic that I'd ever done, so I was there for 4.5 years. Quite frankly, I probably could have moved after 2. The last 2.5 years were pretty tight as far as the success that we had enjoyed. So with John can express this, one of the provisions of our lease agreement is that if we're successful like we plan on being and we expect to be with the type of facility and the type of veterinarians that I employ, we could very well outgrow that. We were just talking about that in the parking lot before we came in. I never am surprised as to how my business has been blessed. The things that we have done and the way they have happened, I would have never imagined. But when you do good work, you care about people, you do a good job, it's amazing how you grow. So we have a lease of 5 years there. I do not expect to finish that lease out at all. I think that we'll be building our facility as soon as we know that the business model is intact, that it's doing well, that it can support paying the mortgage on a freestanding building. That's when we make that move to start doing that, and John is aware of that. That was part of our language from the.
So then another question would be, with this request, with the PUD, is it PUD correct? We can limit the amendment to this applicant. So if he were to move into the strip mall and determine that, in fact, the traffic was not what he anticipated, that someone else could not then come in and develop pad C or lot C.
Question for you, Marcy.
That's for you, Marcy.
Okay, Commissioner Brown, I think you probably don't want to limit it to him, but you could, I guess, give him a time frame if you wanted. I don't know that would be necessary, but if you wanted to say if it's not, he estimates 5 years probably max, but I mean, nobody knows what the economy is going to do. He could always come back and ask for an extension if you did put some type of a sunset clause on it. But PUDs, I won't say it. I know SUPs have a 2-year window, so we would definitely want to make sure that he has enough time to get his building built. So probably he has 5 years because I think he believes that he can do it within 5 years.
Anyone else?
I've got just a few thoughts, and I appreciate both the applicant and all the residents speaking tonight. This is a lot more engagement than we normally get, so thank you. First of all, I think this would be a benefit to the community. Like Chair said, I just feel like there's a need and that Jenks seems to want this. Having said that, you have to balance it with the neighborhood, and I feel like the sound is addressed. The dogs, it's not a kennel, it's really a veterinary clinic. So to me, this seems like something that we want. Also, I was told this 20 years ago. It's like, you got to buy your view. This is a business lot that will be developed into something. And it may not be exactly what we want. I can think of things that are a lot worse in terms of traffic, noise, lighting, all these things. This one, I think is pretty good. And I appreciate the sound restrictions in particular. So, I feel like that works. Just another comment is, I'm glad that we gave more notice, and one of my comments in the UDO that we're working on is to expand the footage. So I know I've talked with DeMarce about this in the past, but because I want people to have an opportunity and not just say, oh, I didn't know that went in. So I'm glad everyone spoke. I'll just very briefly, this is not the topic, but the KCs, I've heard a lot of complaints about that as well. Let me just say for the record, I was not on the commission at that time. But I get it, which is why I'm tuned into sound with this application. And there's been some other businesses that have gone elsewhere. And Jenks is not that big, it's fairly dense. So I'm always concerned about, sound. So it seems like the measures work here. It's not like the other kennel areas. So I'm supportive of this. I understand the residents that are concerned about it, and I'm also open. John, you had some good ideas about restricting it. I think you can, like, a restrictive covenant or like in a restrictive deed, limit it to just an applicant or person, or I've seen some deeds that say, my mother-in-law won't live here or something. That's up to the city attorney, but I think we could be creative there if we wanted to, not necessarily just a time limit, if that's helpful. That's all I have. Thanks.
This Randolph, I had pretty much the same thing said as you did. When this first came through, I was a no for sure because I used to live right there, and I thought to myself I wouldn't want dogs being outside all the time. But after doing research and actually seeing his facility, it's pretty amazing looking, and I think it would make Jenks look better. And without the boarding being something that happens that often, I don't think the way his walls are so much thicker. I definitely think this is something I'm supportive of too, just for the fact that it's not Woodland West. Woodland West definitely has its niche, and this does not seem like that. And it's definitely an awesome looking building. So after doing my research, I'm definitely for it too. So thank you.
All right, do I hear a motion?
That's you, John.
No,
Yeah, John.
yeah. I
will defer to you on this one.
Okay, I move to approve JZ 21-PUD 16 minor amendment 2 with the condition, and John help me here, Marseille, that it be limited to 20. How should I phrase it exactly?
Maximum of 20 runs.
20 non-medical, non-surgical patients.
Okay, maximum of 20 non-medical, non-surgical patients. And for that condition to apply to this applicant only.
The specific PUD.
Yeah, for this PUD.
I'll second it.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
No.
Jeffrey Meyer,
Yes.
Greg Bowman,
Yes.
David Randolph,
Yes.
Cameron.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is for the consideration and possible approval, denial, amendment, or revision of recommendation of TUP 21-46. Request by Melissa Torkelson for approval of a temporary use permit to allow for the sale of fireworks. This is at the northeast corner of 106th Street South at South Elm.
Where's everybody going?
Marseille?
Thank you, Chair Minden and Commissioners. And I feel like this is my night for apologies. I promised last year this would be on the top of my list for 2021, and it has been, and I have had lots of conversations and I have sent out memos, but we kept thinking the UDO would be rolling around and it would be wrapped up, and here we are in May and we have applications again. I would also say that Commissioner Brown did contact me and Councilor Lynn, and we met with staff and had a good discussion about the sale of fireworks and the display of fireworks in the city of Jenks. I have not been directed by the city manager any specific direction, but I want you all to, when we get to that part in the UDO, I want you to take time to read it and make sure that it reflects what you feel is the values of the city and the council. And I think really finding out what does the council specifically want, not just Councilor Lynn, because she's been very vocal and you don't have to guess where she's at. So that's outstanding. But we have 6 others and we have a lot of citizens. So we need to know what all of them think and want. And so I'm going to give you the assignment to find out what everybody wants. But in the meantime, we have 2 applications this month and 1 next month. So this is the Jenks Band. Melissa Torkelson represents them. And they always have, or I should say, I can't say always, but I was here last year and they asked for dates in July and dates at the end of December for New Year's Day. I did, if you look at page 38 of your staff report, it says the 2021 dates of operation are June 15th, July 5th. It's Class C fireworks. So each one of these are regulated and they can only sell Class C fireworks. They want to set up on June 15th and tear down on July the 5th. Then they ask for a second date. And last year, I brought it to you all, and you all did approve both dates at the same time. I am not recommending that this time, knowing that it's possible that it could change this year in the UDO sometime this summer. So I personally have requested that you consider approving the date for July and consider denying the date for December. And depending on the language that's adopted in the UDO, they may or may not get to do it in December. It's possible they will, but I want you all to, if you vote for it tonight, regardless of what the UDO says, it is my professional opinion that they will be allowed in December to go ahead and sell fireworks. I also asked Brandon to look up, and he did for me, how long have they been selling, and the Jenks band, for our knowledge, from what we could determine, has been selling in that location, that exact location, since 2012. So that's quite a long time. We've met with public safety, the police chief, the fire chief. The police chief says they have very few actual calls about fireworks, and the fire chief is very passionate, as you would expect. And I don't think there's probably a fire chief anywhere in the United States that likes fireworks, so we'll just leave it at that. But as far as calls and runs for the fire department, they are minimal, to say. So approving this request as submitted, staff request a waiver of the dust-free all-weather surface. And as you know, in this particular case, there is some gravel or paving. It's kind of a blotchy area. Anyway, staff request a waiver of the dust-free all-weather surface, and otherwise sees no reason to deny the request. And approving it would enable the Jenks band to sell Class C fireworks June the 15th, 2021 through July the 5th, 2021. So if you approve it as it is written, the request as it is written, and it would also allow them to sell fireworks December 27th through January the 1st. And then I use the same language that you've seen before on page 40 and 41. If you get to page 42 is where I wrote the recommendation and ask that you consider recommending approval of the dates June 15th through July the 5th, but consider denying the dates for December 27th through January 1. And I think everybody but Mr. Byer was here last year, so it would probably be very similar conversation. But that's my recommendation. You can approve it as submitted for both dates, or you can approve one and deny the other. It's up to you.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments?
So Marseille, if we approve both of them and it's in the UDO, it says no fireworks, would that not just stop it at that point?
I feel like I have not confirmed this with the city attorney, but it is my professional opinion that if you all approve it tonight and council agrees with that, then they will be allowed regardless of what we adopt, because it is not the law right now. That's not what our ordinance says, and it's not what you're approving. And if you do approve it, then they do have the authority regardless of what changes we make in the future.
Just so the other commissioners know, I'm going to accuse myself of this item.
Anyone else with questions? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak on behalf of this agenda item, come on forward. Give us your name and address.
Good evening, I'm Melissa Torkelson, 637 South 193rd West Avenue, Sandy Springs, Oklahoma, 74063. Thank you for your time. I didn't know what an UDO was, so I talked to Brandon today, and he informed me of kind of the differences of opinions when it relates to fireworks. That's what I kind of want to address really quick, and I want you to really, as you consider the UDO, keep three things in mind. They all deal with the economic impact for the city of Jenks. One of them is the tremendous amount of sales tax revenue that this short window period allows a nice little boost in sales tax revenue. I'm going to actually provide Marseille with all this data. This will be our 8th year in partnership with the band, and we're pretty proud of what the band has accomplished. The second thing is, of course, those permits. We have exceeded the sales in those permits for the city of Jenks. I'll have to look back, and again, this will be another number I provide to Marseille. And I want to say that upwards of $4,000 we sold in permits last summer. It was tremendous. The other thing is the band. This is their largest fundraiser for the year. I want you to think about the economic impact it's having on those kiddos and the fact that they don't have to fundraise the rest of the year. I've been told that that's the case, that this is their largest fundraiser. We have well over 100 individuals that served in that tent. They're all planted here in this community. The dollars from that fundraiser stay here and support the band. So I can only imagine that we would be having a whole lot of disappointed young men and women from the band if they weren't allowed to do this fundraiser. I feel like it's been a great fit. And again, the economic impact to me at the end of the day, that would be something that you would take into consideration as you consider fireworks sales. I did have one question. Marseille had mentioned the UDO. If we need to put in the language, if the UDO passes before our New Year's sales, I will comply with what the UDO says. I'm not going to set up if the UDO says no fireworks. So I would like you to consider that so that if we do have the opportunity to, that we're not exempt from the vote tonight, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can certainly comply with that language if you want to insert that, that if the UDO does pass and you happen to approve tonight, that we will abide by what the UDO states. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So do you supply the fireworks to the Jenks band?
We do.
Can you make sure they don't run out this year?
No, I can't. You want to make last year was an interesting year because if you remember, we were still in that first phase that the governor had issued, for businesses to slowly start. So it was 2 weeks before our opening day, before we even knew. So we wanted to play on the conservative side. So we put their volume at what they sold last year. And we sold out. It was crazy. And I think we were sold out by like 5 p.m. on the.
I had to drive all the way around.
So we'll leave the building out there, so come see this. This year will be really interesting. You're already hearing, if you've been watching the news, the shortage of chlorine for pools. That's going to be the fireworks story you hear on the news next, because like we actually are doing something we've never done before for our indoor facility out in Mounds, and we're importing a container. And we get the rest of our containers from a supplier out of northeastern Oklahoma. He usually gets 8 or 9 containers. He's already been told that 3 of those containers did not even leave China. So it'll be really interesting. Hopefully we get at least what we sold last year. That's what I'm hoping for. So a good problem, but it was a problem. So
Thanks, Melissa.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Or we get a motion?
I'll like to make a motion to approve DEP 21-46 as stated.
Do you want to include both of the?
As stated.
Okay.
Both as stated, both cases stated.
Sorry. Excuse me. Do you want to include anything about for December complying with the UDO if it's passed by then?
No.
Okay.
So we have approved that they'll be able to sell June 15, 2021 through July 5th, as well as December 27th, January 1st.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Craig Bowman,
Yes.
Dave Randolph,
Yes.
Drummond.
Yes. Next item is for the consideration and possible approval, denial, amendment, or revision or recommendation of TUP 21-47, request by Jake's Fireworks for approval of a temporary use permit to allow for the sale of fireworks at 11608 South Union Avenue. Marseille?
Thank you, Chairman. And this is a second request. They only have one date, so they're asking to sell. And I believe we had one here last year, but I'm not sure it was this one. So from June 20th, dates of operation, June 20th to July the 5th, the sales again, are Class C fireworks. They would like to set up June 15th and tear down on July the 10th. The staff has recommended approval with the same conditions. If you want, are you all familiar with this site? I'm pretty sure we approved one here last year.
Good location.
Yeah.
And they moved.
There's been one out there for decades.
Yeah. So I think that it was a different one, but anyway, it could have been the same one. This, they have been selling in the city of Jenks since 2012, but in different locations. They, unlike the Torkelson, they've been at multiple locations. So if you look at page 61, it shows you the general area. And the recommendation, approved temporary use permit intensive to allow for the sale of fireworks, waiving the dust-free parking and meeting the requirements of 1902.2 temporary use, but not including but not limited to someone being present 24 hours a day with access to restroom facilities and provide screening from public view of trash receptacles and storage. It's the same language that you saw on the other one. I just didn't read the other one. And staff does recommend approval.
Okay, thank you. Questions on this one?
I have a question. Last year, didn't we have someone bring up an item about the fireworks stands? We were trying to work more towards support of the nonprofit, like the schools, as opposed to
big business
sales of the fireworks.
That was the discussion where Marcia did a lot of extra work on the details of this. And yes, we did meet with the city attorney. Actually, it was a pretty large contingent of staff involved with that. We've proposed some possible ways to address that. There was concerns about discriminating against profit and nonprofit. And we've also offered some ideas on how that could be dealt with just with the permitting costs. But nothing has been arrived at yet on a permanent solution.
I mean, but municipalities, other organizations discriminate all the time because they make a requirement for nonprofits to apply for grants as opposed to for-profit.
Yeah, that information was given to our city attorney as well. The state itself does it. We actually discussed the fact that the analogy I used is if you come in from Texas and want to buy a hunting license, you're going to pay a different fee as a non-resident, and there'll be a restricted window as to how long and what type of game you can hunt. Whereas if you're a resident of Oklahoma, there's a different fee structure. So we have provided that information to the city to come up with different language. Again, that's back to the city manager and our attorney has to do that.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair, I don't have a.
Yeah, I'm waiting for your questions and then I'm gonna. Okay, are you the applicant?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, come on up and give us your name and address and.
Found out about this at 2:00 this afternoon, so.
No worries.
Chad Bicey, 4009 West, 103rd Place South, Jenks, Oklahoma, so 437.
Anyone questions for the applicant? Anything you want to tell us about this?
You mentioned nonprofit. We're trying to get Jenks Wrestling to operate this camp for us this year. My daughter is dating the head wrestling coach here in Jenks, so we're trying to get him to get on board with the fundraiser. Because, I mean, we run a lot of locations and we try to go to schools first to say, hey, can you get your basketball program in there or whatever? My wife's got one in Paul. My daughter's got one in Glenpool. This one in Jenks. My daughter ran it, or my stepdaughter ran it last year. So yes, we try to get as many organizations in. I mean, I've got a 40-hour-a-week job. This is not how we make our living, so we try to farm it out to organizations to make money. But yeah, you guys have got me at a loss.
That's okay. No, you're doing fine. Well, thank you for staying around and
show up
and waiting.
Hey, man, you guys don't need this either, do you? I show showed you, Mr. Reyes.
Yeah, we have.
But yeah, that's all I got, I'm sorry.
Thank you. No, you're fine. Thanks. Okay.
I'm not gonna rehash the legal stuff, but I think there are some sticky or sort of sticky issues that I don't know the answer to, and like nonprofit or for-profit or local or out of state. And you can get in trouble doing that. And if it's kind of discriminatory, there's not a compelling purpose or something. So I can see why the city attorney might be nervous about that. I'm just gonna defer to her to figure that out. But I just want to say it's not like you can just do that and that's it. And then it's also like, does the local school get some, but it's a for-profit, how do you classify this stuff? And I just think hands off for now, and let's let them chew on it.
All right. So we do hear a motion?
They all.
Go ahead.
Move to approve UP 21-47.
Yep.
All day.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Jeffrey Byer,
Yes.
Rick Bowman,
Yes.
Dave Dringo,
Yes.
Carol Mendon.
Yes. Okay, we still have an item on the agenda for other business, presentation from Houseo Levine Associates on the current status of the UDO. Say.
Thank you,
There
Counselor,
she is.
or Chairman Minden. We have Jackie here with us this evening, and when we scheduled this, we didn't have hardly anything on the agenda, so sorry, Ms. Wells, and sorry, Commission. She was her schedule was booking up quickly, so we just stuck with the date, and here we are late in the evening, but just very excited for all the work that Houseo Levine's already done, and I can tell you, I read until I'm just about nauseous. I don't know how Jackie does this on a day-to-day basis. But go ahead, Jackie.
Thanks so much, Marce. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I do have a brief presentation just to go through the first 5 draft chapters of the UDO. So these have gone in front of staff, and we've revised based on their feedback, and also in front of the UDO Advisory Committee, and we've revised it based on their feedback. So now we want to bring the more refined articles to you and get your feedback and incorporate that as well before we put these drafts onto the project website to get some feedback from the public as well. So starting off, we're going to go through some introductions, a project overview, and then go through the actual draft articles. Like Marce said, I'm Jackie Wells. I'm the primary author for the UDO, but I'm also working with Josh Kuntz, who's the project manager for the comprehensive plan, as well as a team of zoning and graphics experts back in our office. So we're updating the land development regulations primarily to align with the Horizon Jenks comprehensive plan, but to also modernize standards and create a comprehensive, competitive, and user-friendly code. So these are our main drivers for these updates that we'll be going through in just a moment. But just wanted to keep these in mind. The majority of the recommendations for change are to align with the city's new comprehensive plan. So we're updating the UDO in a 6-step process. We are currently in step 4, starting with the development standards and sign standards. So we are reviewing step 3, the draft districts standards. And once we get your feedback and incorporate that, again, those will go on the website for public feedback. All right, so jumping right into our draft articles overview. So the proposed UDO structure has 11 articles, and the structure is really meant to have the most broad information at the very beginning of the UDO, and then you get more detailed and more specific as you go through it. So an individual user of the UDO would not have to be flipping back and forth to understand what they can do with their property. It'll be a much more linear process, much more linear experience as they're moving through. So tonight we're going to be reviewing Articles 1 through 5, the general provisions through the use-specific standards. So Article 1, the general provisions, this really sets up the defensibility of the code. So it has a lot of sort of that legal language that is necessary to ensure severability, the purpose, all of those other important items for defensibility. But no major changes have been made to this section based on what your current zoning ordinance has. The only real changes were to revise some language for consistency and to update references. So Article 2, the establishment of districts. This article contains the purpose and intent statements for all of the various zoning districts, the base districts, as well as the overlay districts. So those purpose and intent statements were updated to align with the future land use categories included in the comprehensive plan. For the residential districts, we're not proposing any major changes to the structure of your residential districts. The office medium intensity district, however, is proposed to be repositioned for business parks and corporate campuses. This was one of the land use categories included in the future land use plan that we wanted to accommodate through one of your existing zoning districts. So the office medium intensity district is very similar to the other office district in the city. So really trying to reposition that to be more appropriate and more applicable to business parks and corporate campuses. The IM Industrial Moderate District is proposed to be transitioned into a legacy district. So through the Horizon Jenks Comprehensive Plan adoption process, we heard from folks that although the existing heavier industrial uses in the city are appropriate and work well, you wouldn't want to see those expanding or moving into other parts of the city. So we're proposing that a district that regulates those areas be transitioned into a legacy district. So those businesses could continue as they are currently. They wouldn't be considered legally non-conforming, but no additional land area in the city could be zoned into that district. We're proposing the establishment of a new district, the Downtown Core District. So this would regulate the downtown core, named pretty aptly. And this is based on the recommendations in the comprehensive plan in the downtown sub area. So it really incorporates a lot of those recommendations, some very specific district standards that would regulate that downtown core area. And then the special theme overlay district, which currently regulates the downtown area, is proposed to be repositioned to the downtown transition overlay district. So we'll see in just another slide here what that area is going to be. But we're proposing that this would no longer regulate the downtown core. That would be the base district. And then the downtown overlay would apply to the transition area only. So that would be the residential areas right adjacent to the downtown. We are also proposing that all of the riverfront area be rezoned to the Riverfront Tourism Commercial District, and that the overlay district be eliminated. So this is really just to streamline the regulation of the riverfront area, ensure that there is sort of consistency in the types of regulation and flexibility that's offered for development there. So this map shows the downtown sub area that is included in the comprehensive plan. So that thick gray line that shows that district boundary. So we're proposing that the special theme overlay district, which is the hatched area, be applied to the neighborhood transition. And then the pink area is the downtown core. That's the district, the new district we're proposing to be established, the DC Downtown Core District. This map here shows the proposed properties to be rezoned to the RTC district. So this would include all of the riverfront sub area included in the comprehensive plan. And then we're proposing that the existing overlay district be eliminated. Any questions on these changes before I jump into Article 3? All right. Moving on to Article 3, this is the base district specific standards. So this article includes the bulk and dimensional standards as well as the permitted special uses for all of our base districts. For the residential districts, we're proposing that the minimum lot area and lot width requirements be revised to reflect the dimensional standards appropriate analysis that was conducted as a part of the diagnostic report. So that analysis found that a lot of the existing properties, a lot of the existing residential neighborhoods have lots that are much smaller in both area and width than your current district standards would allow for. So these Minimum standards are proposed to be decreased to really match up and align with the type of development you see on the ground currently. And this will not only eliminate those seeming nonconformities, although many of those developments were approved as planned unit developments, so they're not technically nonconforming, but it would also help more development be approved as of right, since the majority of the development is going through the PUD process. That is the market viable, type of development, not the larger lots that are allowed through your existing zoning ordinance. So to accommodate the smaller lot area and lot width, we're proposing that the minimum yard setback requirements also be updated to maintain a viable buildable area on those lots. For the non-residential districts, we're proposing that minimum lot area and lot width requirements be eliminated. This is to allow for additional flexibility in your commercial areas and to allow for a more organic pattern of development in those areas. So currently you have your uses as use units in Chapter 10. So we're proposing that those be eliminated and instead all of the uses be consolidated into a single table where it's much easier to reference what uses are allowed in what districts. Moving into Article 4, the overlay district specific standards. So this section includes all of the specific standards for the downtown transition district. So that includes the uses, general design standards, and some additional development standards for this overlay district. Then for the riverfront area, we are proposing that overlay district be eliminated and that all of those standards then be applied to the base district. So moving into our last article tonight is the use specific standards. So these are standards that are applied to specific uses that need some additional regulation. So a lot of these standards exist in your current code and they're embedded within use units. So instead of having those embedded within the permitted and uses table, we're instead referencing these additional standards in the table, and then they live in this separate article. So the use specific standards would be applicable to permitted, special exception, and specific uses, and they're again referenced in that table. Any questions about the first 5 articles and how we've proposed to update them?
Let me just jump in really quick, Jackie. This is John Brown. And I'll apologize to Marseille. I know you gave us a deadline to have questions into you. And I don't know if anybody else ran into this. Maybe it was a user density error, but when I utilized the links on the different articles, specifically as we got into Articles 3 through 5, on the tables and graphics, I didn't see them actually embedded when I opened them up. They weren't there. They weren't there? Okay. And from that standpoint, when I was doing kind of a detailed review in the absence of those tables, didn't feel like I could really do an adequate job of providing some detailed feedback. Marseille, will we be getting updated copies of these first 5 articles that have all of the tables in, or again, was this a user density error remaining?
I believe I sent them separately in a separate email because they weren't reviewed at the same time by staff, and so I believe I sent them later. But I'm happy to resend them, and if you need a little more time to review them, they're not embedded; they are separate.
Okay, okay, I didn't see them come up, so maybe I missed that. I did go through what was presented, but again, on the details of 3 through 5. Also, just a quick comment. Kudos to you, Jackie. You used the term legacy versus grandfathering, which is very dated, so well done there. I did have just a quick question on Article 1, general provisions. And it went back to the force and effect on enforceability because of legacy. I noticed that there was language throughout that reference legacy areas, but should we have a general provision on enforceability that deals with legacy standards? Because again, those standards are going to be all throughout.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we should bring that one back to the city attorney, make sure that our general provisions are all squared away. However, since the legacy district will continue to allow the properties that are currently zoned in that district to continue as they are, the standards or the general provisions should be as applicable to them as the other districts, but definitely want to double check with the city attorney, make sure.
That was the only thing that I missed there. I did notice too on the validity of other laws referencing where the UDO standards might be greater. One of the suggestions I would offer too on, I think it was number 2, validity of other laws, there was an absence of private covenants. So we might have specific covenants within planned unit developments, homeowners associations, and we want to make sure that everyone's clear that if there's a restrictive covenant that is private, that the UDO will not override that as well. So I think we need to add that in.
Yes, that's a great point. We'll be sure to include that.
And then I did have a question too on the limitations on land use. There was 2 provisions, and that was, I think that was Article 2. I was curious why the 2-year window of time on the effective date for permits and zoning clearances. It was 16.2-6.
So the 2-year effective date for permits that had been approved or development that had been approved prior to the adoption of the UDO?
Yeah, I just hadn't seen that before. Kind of raised a question for me. I hadn't seen that 2-year window before. What's the purpose for that?
So I believe that is language from your existing zoning ordinance, but we can connect with the city attorney, make sure if we are able to lower that number, we can. Various states have different sort of thresholds for vested rights. So for how long those development approvals last after, changes in regulation. So we definitely want to check with the city attorney, make sure that we are being as restrictive as possible, but not violating any state statute.
Is that window a standard that you've seen elsewhere?
It definitely varies state by state. Some communities it's as little as 12 months to 18 months, and some it goes up to even 5 years.
Again, I love the language, love the detail, a little bit of OCD coming out of me, but like I said, if you can get me the ones that have the inserts, that way I can kind of finish my homework on that. I'll take
So
a
we
look.
keep the tables outside of the Word documents as we're working through everything, just because Word can be such a finicky program. So just want to make sure we're capturing all of those revisions rather than having those tables float around in different versions of the Word document.
One other just quick question, and it's not necessarily I don't know if we can really address it in the UDO, but I think everybody knows since I'm here with Ward 1, I look very closely at Ward 1, and that's the core of what everybody thinks of when they come to Jenks. And when I look at those legacy districts, some of those areas that are non-conforming, and really from a practical standpoint, we have to look at what can we do with those, specifically like light industrial, where we've got light industrial areas that are sandwiched with residential all the way around. I realize that they can't do anything new zoning wise or making provisions, but again, some recommendations on, is there a way that we can eventually clean those areas up? Because those are areas we've got code enforcement issues, and code enforcement, it doesn't do a lot of good to have standards on the books if you don't have the capacity to enforce them equally.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I think the comprehensive plan perhaps provides more guidance than the UDO will in terms of future development or redevelopment of those more legacy light industrial areas that are in close proximity to residential. So as new development or those uses turn over and new people are looking to use those properties, the comprehensive plan provides the guidance to ensure that those areas don't continue to be that light industrial use if people are looking to do something new with that property.
Those are the only questions I have. Thank you.
I have one question. When we initially start talking about the UDO process, one of the things that caught me off guard when I came on board with this commission was excessive use of PUDs to get around the development standards. And it's my understanding that this process will reduce the usage of PUDs and the frequency with which they appear on the agenda. Based on the work that's done so far, do you see that happening? I mean, just like last month, we had an extensive discussion about the Fraser Falls deal, and I still see the PUD as a way of just working around UDO requirements. So are you seeing a way, a path that we're going to be able to reduce the number of PUDs established, or are we creating new special circumstances that are going to generate more?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of, I know, staff's real drivers for this UDO update is to ensure that not all new development in Jenks goes through the PUD process. Planned unit developments are not only more arduous of a development approval process, so for developers to actually get their development approved, but it's also more difficult for staff to administer. So we definitely want to update this UDO in a way that good development, new development can happen without having to go through that planned unit development process. So to do that, one of the things we did in Article 3 was to revise those lot area width and area minimums to better reflect the type of development that was getting approved through the PUD process. The smaller lot sizes are market viable in the area that previously developers had to go through the PUD process to achieve. But we know that through the PUD process, the city can also require greater development standards, things like landscaping, other types of improvements in a neighborhood that you might not see otherwise. So the next set of articles that you all will be getting a chance to review are those enhanced standards for the city, so that all development, regardless of whether it goes through a straight zoning approval process or through the planned unit development process, would need to meet those standards. We do recognize, though, that planned unit development is still a good tool for the city to have in its tool belt. So we don't want to eliminate that altogether, but we want to ensure that the types of kind of benefits to the city are equal to the more arduous process for administering it going forward.
Thank you, Jackie.
Just add that briefly. I wonder if we need to not approve as many, or say, no, go back to the UDO and try it that way. Just, I don't know, just a thought. This probably starts earlier at the staff level, you know. That's a great thought.
Okay. I think that's it. Thank you, Jackie.
Very good. Thank you all so much. Have a great evening.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Only if Marseille is not going to go to the chapter.
She's an hour ahead of
that
us.
motion.
What did you say?
I just said we'll make a motion to adjourn as long as you're not going to the beach afterwards.
I already been to the beach today.
That's just so wrong.